Welcome to the Kubeflow community meeting for November 5th, 2024. I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and it is governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct. As usual, we typically start and run from our agenda, and our agenda, as usual, starts with where we are with the most current releases. So we'd like to get a release update from the release team. I don't know, is that going to be you, Ricardo, today, or will we have anyone else chime in?
I can do this, but I would like to invite Valentina to discuss today for our yesterday meeting updates. Valentina, can you help us on that?
Yes, for sure. Hello, everyone. So yesterday we had the meeting. We review all the different projects with all the different stakeholders and liaisons. For right now, there are not concerns. There are not blockers or impediments from the teams. We have all the issues registers on our board right now. So you're welcome to explore it. Here is on the tracking project. Yeah, we can open. So the things that are in the to-do is the distributions and Kubeflow. This is something that Ricardo and Josh will follow up, and we will have more news next week. The test plan and the documentation, those will be discussed in around 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, we will be in week 6 of this release, and we are expecting to have more than 50% of the development work implemented. So all the teams feel like they can reach that deadline without issues. Right now, we are asking the liaisons for each group just to include any additional information, especially on the versions that they are planning to release and dependencies versions. But we discussed it with everyone. Everything is on track. So all the information about the current progress is there. And I think I don't have anything else to add. There were a few outstanding questions that will be discussed today on the pipelines working group, for example. Another one about the dependencies. I don't know, Ricardo, you want to add something else?
Yeah, thanks, Valentina.
Of course.
Throughout the discussions we got from the release process, we got some open questions that would like to raise with the entire community. Can you go back to the meeting notes, Matthew, Josh? Yep. After the proposed schedule, there are those 2 open questions. I think Andre raised a concern about the proposed dependency for Kubernetes, which we expect to go with 132, 133. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julius. Andrew said maybe it's big jump between Kubernetes versions because in Kubeflow 1.9 we started supporting 129, and we are about to jump in 3 to 4 releases here. So I would like to bring that question to the entire community. What is your expectation to see Kubeflow supporting in terms of Kubernetes APIs? Will that be good having 132, 133, or should we try other more stable releases? This is one topic. The other one that was raised in the release team meetings as well is that it's concerning about the versioning policy that we have in the release handbook. So we always start with RC0, and there was a question why we should start with RC0 and not starting with RC1. So I don't have a good answer to that right now, but my understanding is that RC0 is naturally what we do for releasing. But yeah, so those are the two questions I'd like to discuss with you all. So yeah, please help me giving answers to me for those two questions.
Sorry, I just find it really funny that someone's debating whether we should start from 1 or 0. To be clear, computer scientists count from 0. I think that should be the end of the discussion.
Well,
Like in the same way that we have 1.0, you know?
yeah, I understand, but yeah, I,
Yeah,
I believe
think
this is something that I know that this is part of the handbook, but I also would like to hear from you guys if
I can
this
give you
version
history,
policy looks
Ricardo.
good.
Yeah, I think eventually we just try to follow what Kubernetes is doing. Kubernetes has RC0 releases, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Majority of CNCF project, they do the same.
I think so, yeah. I think most projects overall do it.
Yeah, this was raised by me. I think it was a bit confusing that we say our first release candidate is RC0, our second release candidate is RC1, our third release candidate is RC2. This is why
The
I raised
ordinal
this issue.
nature of it doesn't really matter though, does it?
Do we have a page that explain this? I mean, I mean, it's been brought up, so it's valid. Do we need to have a little why we start from RC1 page or something?
All I have is the version policy from the release handbook, but yeah, it clearly states that we always start with 0 to indicate this is a pre-release. So that's what it says according to the release handbook.
Yeah, but it's still a pre-release if it's RC1 and RC2. So in the end, I cut the releases, and this is not daily work, but maybe monthly work or so, when they cut the releases. And then I do this, and I think, well, this sounds a bit silly to users, and this is why I brought this up.
I think most users will be very familiar with counting from 0.
Julius, what could we do to make it sound less silly to users?
I don't know whether we need to have any policy in this regard. I'm not fixed to any specific version scheme, but I think whatever number or how it looks like in the end, if we call it first release, it probably should have a 1. If it's the second release, it probably should have a 2. However that looks in practice. I'm not even fixed on the current version schema that we have.
Well,
We
I
can
don't think it
also
matters that
drop-
much. I think we should just stick with whatever we're currently doing so that we're consistent with what we've been doing in past. That's my vote. And I don't think we should waste much more time on this.
Do we currently have a link to the release handbook policy?
I think it's literally on the screen.
It's in the meeting
It's
notes.
on the screen. Okay.
Okay, for example, for Kubeflow 1.9 or so, I don't remember anymore. For one of the releases, I started with 1. Also, nobody cared about doing it differently.
I mean, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just what I'm saying is, my preference is follow what we've been doing in past, and if what we've been doing in past most of the time is starting from 0, let's just keep doing that, and then let's move on to things that matter in this meeting. We're wasting people's time.
Well, yes. So let's just, if we have it in the handbook, I say we just link it out if anyone asks questions and it's confusing. And if it impacts people's day-to-day more, we can address it, but I think it's in the handbook.
Okay, so final decision is we keep doing RC releases starting from 0, right?
That's what I do on the Kubeflow repo. It's what most people do on the other repos. So I guess if you're doing it on the manifests, that's good.
Yeah, and just make sure users are aware of the handbook. If they have questions, we can point them towards it.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it becomes a big problem, we can talk about changing it. But you know, I don't think it's a big problem.
All right.
I appreciate
Okay.
the logic. You know, if it's something we need to dive into, maybe we could look into legacy and talk to Jeremy about it. But I think we should, as we talked about, discontinue our process as documented. Okay.
And the KDS API, my recommendation is we just set a minimum version because there isn't really significant breaking changes. Maybe there is in 132, I haven't looked, but in 130 up to 131 at least, there isn't significant breaking changes between 129. So like the bigger question that users care about is the minimum version because they're going to still try and use it on newer versions. And of course, for us, the main thing that impacts that is the Istio version that we ship by default, because the Istio version we ship by default will have a minimum version. Usually it is backwards compatible to a large extent, but like that's kind of my vibe there. If anyone disagrees with that, then
Okay.
so like, are we still supporting 129? Like that's the bigger question to me.
So this looks like news to me. There is something that ties Istio with Kubernetes versions, right? So there's a specific Istio version that works well with a specific Kubernetes version.
Not 1 to 1. It's usually 1 to 3 or 4. So like there's so if you go to the Istio, just type Istio version matrix into Google, and you'll see that they only officially versus technically supporting is very different. But and they also sometimes say we have officially supported these ones, but we run tests for these ones, which is even a larger list. So just check that list to make sure that especially when we set a maximum version, that the maximum version should largely be dictated by Istio, because the only thing that interacts with Kubernetes in such a complicated way in Kubeflow is Istio.
I just checked the versions, and we have 123 right now in the master branch, which still supports up from Kubernetes 127, and we will probably have 124, which supports from Kubernetes probably 128 or 129.
Yeah, like 123 or 124 for Istio makes a lot of sense. Let me just check what the Kubernetes current supported version is and when it's going to deprecate. The best way to check that is on Wikipedia, ironically. If you just go to
I can paste
Kubernetes
the
Wikipedia
link.
page, they have a nice timeline. I'll paste it in the chat. It's quite funny.
Awesome.
So I'll paste the two links for people to see. Where is this? Sorry, I'm trying to find the actual note. Where are we looking at, Josh? Where did this?
This is actually from the project table.
Oh,
And
sorry, don't worry about that. Okay, I figured out. Okay, Kubernetes release timeline. That's
I
support.
posted
Maybe
both in the chat.
that's support timeline, and that's on Wikipedia. And then you've got the Istio version matrix, and these are the two things that we should mostly be. Let me just get these for you. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. We don't need to look at them. I just wanted to highlight that that's what we should make our decision of. And so right now, the Kubernetes version 129 will probably be the earliest version that is supported by Kubernetes at the time of the 1.10 release.
Gotcha. And
Yeah, right now.
go ahead.
So I'm not sure that we should make a jump again. I think the problem is I understand that manifest can run multiple versions, but we need to make sure like many users just cannot jump from 1.29 to 1.32. And that is why I'm suggesting that we just support 1.30 at most.
Well, no, I think it's
Right.
not about at most, it's about minimum version, right? Like it's very likely that 132 will actually work. It's just the minimum version is the more problematic one.
I think we should, if we announce that we support these versions, we should make sure all of the components running their E2Es on those versions. This is not the case today. Only training operator and Katib running 3 versions for their E2Es.
I'm running
And
all the
pipe-
CI/CD on 131, so this is what I
Yeah,
have.
but you're running this on the 1 version, right? Julius, you need to run this on the 3 or 4 versions if we say to users we introduce support for those 4 versions in the Kubeflow release.
Yes, sometimes documentation leads or testing lead or whatever do that for the release. And I also know that if I apply the release on some clusters, but in practice, it's more like Matthew says.
Yeah, but again,
compatibility.
it's not, I don't think it's stable to rely on the feedback from users. We should make sure all of our E2Es are running on the Kubernetes version. because there are many features that probably you don't test in the manifest repo.
So that's what I'm saying. I think more. I definitely think that we should do the manifests a little bit. Definitely, like you're saying, Julius. I mean Andre. But I think we should mostly try and do a grid test on the actual apps themselves, right?
Probably, right?
I
Because
have
manifest is testing minimal functionality. Go ahead, Josh.
I have kind of a different perspective on this. I think the community should do as little as possible and try to stay as current as possible. And if folks want something that's older that's tested, that's why a distribution gets paid. So in my opinion, the community should minimize its test and documentation requirements and try to stay as close to current as possible.
So who is going to provide your support in that case for breaking changes, right? Like is it responsibility for distributions or responsibility for developers?
Either the end user is going to have, if they're not staying current, then they're going to have to figure out how to fix it, or they're going to have to go and find paid support.
Yeah, but who is
I
going to
think-
fix it and what, where, right?
Well,
I think it's
that's
stated
that-
on.
Go ahead.
I think it's stated on the installation page. You can either use more or less the current version, maybe with some time delay. Yeah, right now this is Kubeflow 1.9 or 1.9.1. And if you don't want to use that version, you can get support. As stated there, distributions, freelancers, build up the knowledge yourself.
So
Anyway, I think
I have a different, yeah.
I think what Andre is everyone about to say is just that it's hard to fix things without forking the upstream apps, and that's bad for the community.
Yeah, exactly. And looking for the Istio, like, it's a very mature project, right? They support 4 Kubernetes versions, right? Because they have a larger adoption and they have a larger production usage, right? So if you want to have the same from our community, we need to run our E2Es on multiple Kubernetes version.
Yeah, in practice, for example, I ran Kubeflow 1.8, 2 or 3 versions above or below what we tested, and the same will be the same for Kubeflow 1.9 or so. I mean, you can get people to extend their test in the downstream upstream applications. That's fine, if there's enough bandwidth to do so. But in practice, I don't think it's going to be much of an improvement.
But again, I don't think Manifest will be able to verify all of those features, right? That's, and, the component support, right? You just run a minimal amount of tests to make sure the components are functional, right? But you don't run all of those E2Es. Like, take a look at the pipelines, right?
We do typical user workloads, run a pipeline from Jupyter Lab, run a pipeline from more or less from the web interface or so. And yeah, just this dummy pipeline, which does some dummy calculations.
Yeah,
but
most
don't
it's
test
probably-
every
yeah.
feature.
We're testing are related to Istio more than actual the apps themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're not, like, for example, testing gang scaling, right? You don't really maybe
Yes.
testing integration with Tecton, right? Or other, features that our, components support. So anyway, my own, yeah. Go ahead, Mitch.
No, I'm saying anyway. I agree, but I don't. What are you suggesting, Andre? Can you put it in simple terms?
I just want to suggest that we do what, for example, Istio is doing. So if we say that we support those versions, we should make a small jump. Otherwise, we should run our E2Es on multiple Kubernetes versions, right? If we say we want to support 1.32, we need to make sure we run our E2Es on 1.30, 1.31, and 1.32, and not just tell users to migrate to 1.32 if they want to use Kubeflow 1.10, because it just wouldn't be impossible for majority of users, especially like large enterprises who are like way behind on a Kubernetes version.
So
The problem is, like, if we do this,
I'd like
we just
to see them complain, right? I'd like to see the large customers complain and tell us where they need us to be. Quite frankly.
yeah.
I mean,
And-
deploy care, for example, supports just a truly horrendously large number of versions. Like I think the earliest is like 114 or something.
I think the only problem we might face with the issue that we can get much less adoption, because
122.
large enterprises see we don't support Kubernetes 1.30 and they probably just won't use Kubeflow, right?
I would argue that the community's position is we are trying to minimize our work effort. We can't test everything. And if you don't provide feedback during the planning. And let me just give some great kudos to the way that the release team meetings are being run and the project board that's being, promoted out in public, which is giving you all the versions. There's a test plan and a documentation plan. This is fantastic. I mean, compared to what we've done in previous releases, we are way ahead of the game. And I want to applaud those folks that are leading that charge. End users need to show up here.
I think Josh, all he's asking for is just that on the official manifest page, we have a comma and say 129, 130, 131, and we just test even we just do a grid test of those three, even if it's just on release.
Yeah,
I'm
this is
willing
what
to
we
go
right now.
whatever way the manifest or the people who are actually doing the work. I'm willing to go. But, think about now if you've got some backward compatible fix that you have to do and how long you're going to support that as the community.
Well, I think the easiest way is just to say whatever the supported versions of Kubernetes, as long as they're going to be supported for more than a couple months after the release, that they're not about to be removed, then we should just have that on the list of things we test before release.
Is it supported too?
Well, nothing is supported. I mean, we don't really offer official support for anything. Like people can support themselves, and if they have a bug, then we support them. But that's not the same as supporting.
For example, in practice, I will run Kubeflow 1.9.1 on Kubernetes 129, probably to 132 in practice. And
Yeah,
for
whatever the currently
110,
supported ones are,
yeah.
right?
I'm willing to defer to the release team manager's decision on this. So I've stated my piece, and you've heard from others. So I think this is the release team management decision.
Yeah, I mean, we can defer this to the release management decisions. I agree. At the same time, if some of the commands just won't be compatible with 1.32, they probably will be not part of 1.10, right?
I appreciate that. The other piece is if there's a decision that's narrow like that, I think we have to promote it to the community so they know a priori and they can complain and ask for what they want. I'd like to see an issue created that says, this is what I need.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I'm not against jumping to 1.32. I would love if all of the working groups will spend their effort to support multiple versions, like what we do for training and and AutoML. The problem is this is not there yet. Just some effort that notebooks, pipelines, and data working group needs to do with model registry, Spark operator pipelines, and notebooks. And if all of the working groups leads are happy with this, we can just support multiple versions, right?
Okay, let's move on, I think. Yep.
All right.
I just want to quickly, as I want to keep Kubeflow Notebooks 2.0 top of mind, and I've got great news because we have 5 new contributors to it, which is always fun.
5.
Yeah, I know. Some of them don't know it yet. I'm joking. No, but we found them on the street. We just dragged them into the office. Anyway, no. So it's more like we've got 5 people who are expressing their interest. I won't list them yet because they haven't formally started contributing yet, but hopefully we can get some of those people to share that they're contributing soon. In any case, the status is that the controller is still mostly feature complete. We haven't done much on that yet. We're currently focusing on getting the mockups for the UI finished, which is partially for these new contributors. And so that will also mean that we hopefully have some mockups that we can share publicly as well, for the UI at least, which I think will help a lot of people understand what it will do for the end user. Again, if you're interested in contributing, that top link there, 1756 on the Kubeflow repo, will give you answer FAQ kind of style of what it is, but it's just the next version of Kubeflow Notebooks. If you use Kubeflow Notebooks, I would love to get your feedback because it is better. It's just making sure that in the infinite edge cases of things that you could be doing, that you are supported still. Other than that, if you are a React front-end developer or a Go back-end developer, please connect with us. Our next meeting is this Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific. You can get the invite by looking on the Kubeflow community about page or by joining the Kubeflow Discuss Google group, but I think the Google group may not be working properly. At least it takes a couple of weeks for the invites to come to your calendar. So, yeah. So if anyone is on the call, or knows anyone, please do that. Anyway, any questions before I just hand it off to the next person? If not, then cool. Okay. I guess we briefly talked about the next topic. I just moved it to the next one, but let's not go too crazy on it. Do you want to say it, Julius? You were saying?
Yeah, it was less about logos, but more just about adopters. So if you can state on the main Kubeflow page or an install Kubeflow page, wherever users land first, well, we have many big adopters in the industry, such as Google, IBM, Red Hat, and some others. Apple probably here as well, who are adopters of Kubeflow, whatever that means, whether they're selling it, whether they are consuming it, but it's being used by large, prominent enterprises.
Yeah, I'm real supportive of this. You know, one thing we saw as kind of an addition to this, I mean, listing the name is great. There are these legal aspects about it. But one thing we found at another company I worked at was that if you gave away a real nice sweatshirt, people would write up a very small use case, which was really crazy because then their legal company would find out they did it and the legal people would come and try to take it down. But some of them stayed up. I don't think we have that much swag, right? I don't know that Amber's here. No. And maybe we can check at KubeCon to see if they have any Kubeflow swag. Usually there's a KubeCon store, right? Where you buy swag, but I like this idea. It needs to be a minimal amount of work, but we do need to be realistic that sometimes people are going to come back and say, we put up our name, we got to take it down because the legal people are telling us we got to take it down.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
not just the logo, by the way. Like trademarks can also encompass word marks as well. So we just do have to be careful about that as well.
Yeah, but maybe it could be just, as Julius said, like just maybe stating the name in the website instead of the adopters.md, which is a bit hidden in GitHub.
Yeah, I mean, we can automatically extract from adopters MD into the website, but we just need to have a common structure, you know what I mean, of some kind.
Oh.
And it is useful to have like pull requests proving who did what as well sometimes. I mean, that would be on the website as well. So I know that Kserve lists some adopters. My biggest concern is that it just becomes out of date. You know, we get defunct companies on there, or the only people who are willing to put their names on there are companies that aren't super cautious about their trademark, which often overlap with companies that are doing strange things. So
there definitely has to be a vetting process. But what's interesting is if you look at like flight.org, it has a trusted by, and it seems to have logos. And I'm wondering how they managed to do that and why legal is coming after us in the first place. Because if they want to use Kubeflow but not be associated with it, that's an interesting conversation to have, as well as then how do we, do that the right way, and how do we keep it up to date?
Cardo?
So, just wondering here, maybe Chase, you could help me understand if that could be a good thing. What if thinking more than just flags, maybe we could create some sort of special section on our website, something like community highlights or community, we could have a better name for it, but it could be a special place for those adopters to explain their use case, and then we can promote them in the social media. And that would be a good way to, motivate them to have their names tied to the Kubeflow project. You know what I mean? Not sure if that's something that could bring more interest than only sweats. But I don't know. What do you think about this, Chase?
Yeah, it's interesting. And maybe we'll have to all kind of ponder this because again, we want to make sure that there is a sense of Kubeflow. Like the goal of that is a sense of Kubeflow pride and stability, right? So who wants to step up and how can we get our end users to step up and want their logo on the page because they want people from the community to come work for them, and B, we want people that maybe don't have jobs or are looking to adopt the community or looking to adopt a platform. Maybe they're even just looking for a platform in a company to see, oh, look at all these other companies using it. So how do we drive that adoption and drive that kind of pride in the project? I think is the greater problem here to prevent legal coming from after you.
So the legal stuff we can deal with, but I think the bigger problem with Kubeflow is that it's kind of like saying you use the cloud, right? It's a lot of different tools. And I think most people would not necessarily be comfortable saying they use Kubeflow, but they might be comfortable saying we use Kubeflow notebooks or Kubeflow pipelines or Kserve. Like, for example, I know Wikipedia uses Kserve, but nothing else. I even put it on the Wikipedia page, very ironically, because I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, but for example, in this call, we already have Apple, Android, Google, we have IBM, Red Hat, we have DHL, and probably they are maintainer. They have working on a project, so probably there we could already get something from.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, would they say they use Kubeflow, or would they say they use the thing that they contribute to, which is probably different components in each company's case?
Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like the Kubernetes has case studies. Is that what you're saying, Ricardo, to have these case studies?
Yep. But we could do something like, give a better name. Community showcase, community highlights. I don't know, just speaking out loud. So back to the thing that Julius said. My personal opinion here. I don't want to add Red Hat as an adopter, and at the same time we're contributing with the project because this might bring some sort of confusion on what is our position under the Kubeflow project. So I don't know. Are we a distribution? Are we adopter? Are we what we are after all? Maybe this is something I'd like to discuss internally with the my colleagues here. But I think we should think of companies that it's outside of the contribution process. Like I think I got from last KubeCon that yeah, PepsiCo. Yeah, it's a good company that we could like start with adding as an adopter, just to bring more companies to the community, not only the ones that we are already seeing with contributions or owning a distribution and so on. Of course, everyone is very welcome, but me personally, from the Red Hat perspective, I believe we need to step back before making that decision.
Well, and
Also-
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying also, like, where are they going to put their resources to say, like, get approval to get they adopted, right? So, like, is it going to be they can do that for a distribution like Red Hat's one or my one or other ones? I don't know, just thinking that as well, right? People like might not want to say they use upstream Kubeflow because that's not strictly true. They might use a distribution.
Well, I would argue though, success, that's really interesting. So if they're using a distribution, they don't want to say that they use Kubeflow. But isn't a distribution a permutation of Kubeflow?
I mean, yeah, it is, of course. And in the end, yes, of course it is. But it's just like the companies are full of people. They don't have infinite time. Where are they going to put their marketing / legal resources to get approval to do this? And it may be for the thing that they actually use. That's kind of what I'm not saying that every company is going to be like that. It's just it also because it could be seen to be endorsing the whole project and things like that.
But other projects have solved this problem, and they have distributions too. And people are coming to the table saying, I use Kubernetes, I use Istio, I use Flight. So this is good for everyone. This is good for individual contributors because this shows that this is a project that people are contributing to. This is good for distributions because they can present case studies out there saying, listen, we're using Kubeflow. And if you want to use Kubeflow, here's an opinionated way to use it. And also you could argue that this isn't total lock-in because you're a permutation of the Kubeflow project. I think giving more people case studies and value of why we're using Kubeflow and how they're using Kubeflow will help us learn, help the community learn, and is ultimately good for everyone. So maybe the distributions can help fuel this if they have customers using them and say, hey, let's go to KubeCon, let's go to Kubeflow Summit, and let's talk about how we're using this together, like other distributions do, or other projects do.
I mean, Josh, I think the simplest solution is just to start advertising that Kubeflow/community adopters page because we already have that. And then we need to make a decision on how we approve or don't approve, and then how we remove companies as well. Like, so what the requirements to be on the list are. Because, like, for example, Airflow has this problem where things go on the list and never come off. You know, there's hundreds of companies on there that are now defunct, you know, I mean, it looks a bit weird. So like, I think, Josh, that would be a question for the KSC, right? Which is, what are the requirements to be on the list?
And do you, I mean, if they used it at one point, do you need to remove them? I mean, and ultimately you're saying people adopted this project at one point. Like, are you
Sure.
going to remove stale case studies? Or are you going to say, hey, listen, here's the history. In 1.8, a company was doing X, Y, Z.
I mean, yeah, it's just a question of like, what about if the company goes under or becomes incredibly scandalous in some way? Like, yeah.
If we've used Kubeflow, would you take Weave off our website right now? If we had this?
I mean, I think those examples are bad. I think the good examples for like Airflow are stuff like crypto exchanges. Like Airflow has got a lot of crypto exchanges on their list, which doesn't necessarily bode confidence for new users.
Because
I
of
like
the crypto
adopter. I
practice.
think we need to move on. I think we should continue to promote people to add themselves as adopters.
So, I mean, I can make a link to, so I think the big thing is like, do we want to make a link on the website to that section? Because right now we don't even, there's no one knows that that page exists. You know, that's what I'm saying, Josh.
I haven't looked at this adopters.
I don't think there's anyone on there, or if there is, there's no one recent. Yeah. And so as long as we can make it, I might ask that we reformat the page a little bit just so that I can automatically scrape them out. But, yeah. And this is what I'm saying, like, adopters of individual components are a great,
Yeah.
so like, that's what I'm saying. So like, if we can get all of the, like, we can have overall Kubeflow platform be one of them as well. But that obviously raises some complicated questions. But the end user doesn't really care what they're using. We can just list them all. But anyway, all I'm saying is if we want to highlight that these exist, we need to have them on the website, and then we need to link them on the website somehow. Or scrape them into the website, one of the two.
Yeah. I don't know. Sounds like work. You know, just link people to this website. I mean, to this page. Seems easier, they'll find it, but I get the reason to promote it, but I'm also cautious that updating it, so.
Sounds like someone might need, do we need to have, if we do the Kubeflow outreach group, working group, et cetera, is this something they would maybe need to own?
Yeah, definitely. This would be a very good one for the outreach team to have. And I'm hoping next year, and why don't we go ahead and kind of say we need to do this adopter, but I'm not quite sure how to do it yet. We need to promote it more. But I'm hoping as I step down from the steering committee, I'll have more time to do outreach type things. And maybe we can start to attack some of this stuff and get 1 or 2 or 3 things done by the end of next year that address the use cases, the list of users, this type of thing.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, as a process. So we don't have a decision. There's not a PR open on this right now. There's no like decision we can make on this, right?
No.
Besides, like we would need a PR or an issue open that said, hey, do we need to list the adopters on the website, right? And this is how we want to do it. Or
Yeah,
we
I'd
want
say
to link
the
to
three
this.
requirements would be we need to have individual adopters pages for all the major components, because as you can see, there's only three. And then secondarily, something on the website. Yes, that's my, and again, it doesn't need to be like what Flight's doing on the whole front page. It can just be on the about page or on the installing Kubeflow page, maybe, you know, in like a grid or something underneath the installing Kubeflow page. But yeah.
It might be interesting to talk to our end users and ask them, like, this is something we can gather data on, or talk to someone who's done this. Does it give you more confidence? Because the outcome we're wanting is adoption. So we should maybe test this hypothesis and ask people, figure out how do we have the data on it. Do you feel more confident with these logos? Do you feel like it's fluff? That might be something interesting to explore.
I mean, there is something to be said about the fact that Kubernetes doesn't need to do this because they're the default. Kubeflow hopefully can get to the point where we don't need to do it either, because we are just the default. Like there's no question in the community about what our position is.
But they also have that huge case studies. And I think that also gives people ways to use it, right? When you see a case study, vision drives decision, right? So you read a case study, oh, you know, TileDB for single cell or something. And you look at it, you're like, oh, you know, some other company did that. That's something we could do. This helps me build a business case
Absolutely.
versus
So
just
that
being
is what you're saying there is
developer-driven.
a bit different to the goal of adopters though, right? That's more like helping guide people because they know, you know, they're already going to use it. It's just like making it easier for them to use it almost.
I think it's a little column A, little column B, because you see the logo, right? If I was trying to do vector search with TileDB and I saw Spotify was using it, I would go, this is interesting. Let me read their case study, because they're a company that does this.
Do we
Case
have
studies
an
also
I just
action
want
item?
to yeah, sorry, just a small point from my side. Like I like the idea. I just want to inform that we have pros and cons of listing and non-listing. Some open source communities, they don't list their adopters, giving the, you know, problems that you say about out of date, or some companies just don't want to be listed. I would love for outreach work, you know, to explore what other communities are doing and how we can adopt it. But the case study, I think this is what we want to do initially with CNCF. And maybe adopters would be the next point, but we need to understand like what is the right thing for us as a community moving forward, right? Yeah, because, you know, I'm pretty sure there will be multiple companies who just don't want to list themselves on a website, right?
And I think the key here is we're not dragging anyone to post themselves on our website. If you kind of look at even what Kubernetes does with the case studies, or you look at, you know, Terry can talk about what Kserve does, right? Companies opt into this because they see it as valuable.
The good thing about case studies is we can really vet the companies as well, though, and it's not a big question as to like, why did you add them but not them? It's more like, hey, we just did a case study with this group.
I think that's a deeper question, is what does it...
We need to kind of move along on this one. I'm glad to keep it going, but I think that we need an action item defined out of this, which I don't think we have a PR or a issue that needs to be that's been defined yet. And we probably need to define what the issue or the PR is going to be so we can vote on it. And my view would be, let's take a baby step and try to improve as we go. But I'm glad to work on the vision and try to implement that too.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so we should, Josh, do you have any updates about the election or not? I see that there's, actually before that, I do see that there is 2 big proposals by James. Are these known to you, by the way? These I'll list them here. One is to, like proposal to rule changes, to like constitutional, if you will, rule changes. One of them is, one of them I disagree with, and the other I don't know yet, which is, this one is only one, oh, where is it? Only one, one special vote per org in special votes, which means like constitutional changes effectively. Currently, they just require a supermajority. This one wants a supermajority and plurality of the organizations represented on the group. I personally don't think that's a good idea for the reasons I listed, but because it just causes some technicalities and some possible crises, but and I don't see it benefiting the community that much because it's already a limit. And since, especially if there's a proposal that he's just made to say only one member per org on the KSC. Anyway, I don't know if this is his opinion or your opinion or whose opinion these are, but
No, these have been through the KFC. So
KFC.
the only one, yeah, the KFC, the KSC, only one member per org on the KSC starting in 2020.
That's his proposal, I guess, or if that's yours, maybe.
This was approved through the steering committee.
Because
But
also, so
now we're
special
gonna do it in
changes do
public.
need.
I don't know. We haven't done it on this PR, so I guess it's got to go back through. Well, this is starting in 2025. So as I remember this one, this was after the current election. We weren't going to change the current election. We're going to have the current election go through where you could have multiple people from multiple members from one company, more than one, be elected to the KFC. But after this election, it will be reduced to you can only have one per company.
Because it's currently 2. The limit is currently 2, I believe.
Oh.
So that's one. And the second one is if you have two people from the same company, they only get to register one vote between the two of them.
So that's only for special votes, though, right? And also,
yeah, that's for governance.
And but also, the reason I disagreed with it is for the 2 reasons I listed. One is that in the case that we are allowing 2 members from the same org, if we're not, then that's a different thing. In which case, the rule doesn't make any sense. Is that if you had a makeup of like 3 companies of the 5 seats, which is 2 people representing one company, 2 people representing another, and then 1/3, you could end up with requiring a unanimous vote for every change. And then the second part was that
and we were okay with that.
Okay.
We were okay that you needed
then the second problem is that the members of the KSC are individuals, and how do you deal? And they're not strictly there to represent particular companies. So what happens if 2 members of the same company disagree on a particular vote? How does that company's vote get allocated? Is it just dealt? Because
we had a lot of discussion on that too.
Yeah, and so like my thought process is the process is already quite robust. Like requiring 70% rounded up, it effectively allows any one person plus one, maybe it depends on the number of people on the board at the time, to veto any governance change. Because the point is that governance changes should not be common; they should be incredibly rare, and they should be through unanimous consent, effectively, but not quite unanimous because you can't have that in the real world, you know. So all I'm saying is that it actually makes it easier for I think it doesn't help the situation is what I'm saying. Like it makes it easier for like if 2 people are harder to corrupt than 1, even from the same company.
Oh. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, sorry, I should have written provide a bit more context because I was drafting these PRs and there were some issues. So, but anyway, so I'm gonna update the PR a little bit later on. So, with like more context in the description. But to answer your question, so all the issues that you brought up, there was lots of discussion in the KSC over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So, so regarding the the special case where there's just 3 companies representing KSC, 2, 2, and 1. So, and that would require the unanimous vote if this proposal goes through. So the KSC thought that was okay. I mean, for if you just have 3 different votes, then it feels like like a unanimous vote should be needed. for changing a constitution. So that was one. The other one was one of the goals for this rule is to prevent. So if there is a company that has 2 members, this rule was designed to prevent that company from having the power to reject any proposals to the KSC, to changes to the KSC charter. Now, like I think in the ideal world, right? So each member would act individually and according to his own judgment of what's best for the Kubeflow project. But there were concerns about this may not. I mean, this may not always be the case in practice. The company can exert a lot of pressure on their representations on the KSC, and I think the KSC member recognized that even though in those cases the KSC member may not be able to vote, according his own judgment, his or her own judgment. So that's the answer to one of your questions, and the other one is how can the 2 votes be reconciled if between the 2 people representing the same company. So we didn't have a great answer for this, actually.
And that's I think that's the actual hard blocker, because it leaves us in a crisis. Like, it literally leaves us in an impossible, like, there is no higher body. That's the point.
I don't think so. I mean, so if a proposal is agreed by, let's say if there's just 2, let's say situation is 2, 1, 1, 1, right? So just only one company that has 2 members on the committee. If the proposal is agreed by the all 4 other members, and the proposal can still pass, right? The 2 people representing the same company, I mean, they could not cast a vote in that case.
Which is equivalent to, and to be clear, as stated in the rules, is equivalent to saying no if you don't vote in a special vote.
Yeah. And if you let them vote, and if they're mixed opinions, if you let them vote, there will be a 1 for and 1 reject, right? So if they can resolve, and let's say they abstain, that's equivalent to 1 no. If you let them vote, it equivalents to 1 yes and 1 no. So that's not they're not too different from a 70% rule perspective.
Like, I think the way you should phrase it then is different. I mean, personally, I still think that's, so for the reasons of the first one, I think that's, so my response to the, like, to be very clear, your concern about one company being able to dictate things is very true. It is a concern, but it's not as big of a concern because what we're talking about here is in the negative, not the positive. They can't add things to the rules. They can only block new rules.
No, the problem is they can block any changes to the charter, right? And this is the major concern we have.
But isn't that the point? Like, do we not agree that the charter is acceptable as it currently stands?
No, the problem is if you have 2 members from single organizations, they can block any changes to the charter in the future.
But that's the point.
But it may not be acceptable, right? So, for example, in the other rule, right, we wish to introduce a rule that encourages more diversity. But let's say if this rule was not introduced right now, for whatever reason, maybe it was not the right time, or maybe people didn't think about it, then this rule may not be introduced, may not pass. Right?
But that's the point. Like, the point was we agree to the community what we thought was a reasonable balanced situation, which is like, allowing companies to have 2 members allows them to have slightly more influence. Like, that is the point. And also protect their investment, if you will.
Yeah, and they can vote on that for the non-governance. They can vote in that way for non-governance related issues.
I mean, obviously, it's not my decision, obviously, but like my vote is, I would say I would prefer that we just don't do it. But if you do it, my recommendation that would structurally be more correct, based off to prevent the crisis, is to say that for special votes, your vote is weighted by the proportion of like weighted down by your organization's proportion on the vote on the KSC. You know, so that then both members do still get to vote independently, but they have to vote unanimously with their own company if that for their vote to count fully, you know. Otherwise, it just leaves the question of procedurally what is happening, who is voting on behalf of the company. No, that's really a big question. So like if we still let everyone vote individually, but we just say your vote is 0.5 times the value of a single company's vote if you have two companies, if you have two members from your company.
Yep, that I think that does resolve it technically.
That resolves the problem completely. It still means that a unanimous vote is required for the case we've got 2-1. Because again, the 70%, we chose 70% very specifically because it's more than 66%.
Okay.
But I think, Matthew, this still will allow folks to work differently from the same organization, right? I agree with your statement that we, like, you know, you should vote on your personal opinion, not on the company representation. We have this another proposal to introduce, but we need more time to think about the wording. But we just want to, you know, make sure that the people on KSC, they're safe in terms of, you know, company pressure. And at the same time, because in the future, right, we will never have more than one folks from single organization in the KSC, right? Because we have another rule to introduce in the next election that only single company can be present in the KSC, right?
But can you explain the reasoning behind that? I mean, I understand the principal reasoning, you know, that you would want diversity, but like, doesn't that
so
also...
So the main reason, I agree with your statement totally that, you know, like people should should basically make decisions not on their companies but on their behalf, and they should make it first, you know, they should make Kubeflow be successful, not their company be successful, right? If they want to be in the KSC. But the problem is it's just not realistic.
No, I want them to vote in the interest of their companies. What I'm saying is I would like companies that have an outsized investment in Kubeflow to have an outsized influence in the community. Like it's a feature. Like the feature is that companies are more likely to contribute if they can accumulate power.
Yeah, that's true, but it could be hard to have more than one, you know, more than one person in the KSC, and they can all have a conflicts between each other, right? In terms of their decisions making, right? Because there might be some pressure from the leadership, right? That they want to promote.
But that's what I would
to the
expect to
community.
happen. This is the point, and that's why the system is there to prevent governance changes without unanimous, effectively.
Yeah, so we think that, you know, I mean, right now in the stage we have right now, like having more diversity in the steering committee is better.
Sure.
And, you know, allow only single organization be a member of KSC is better for the community. There are, like, you know, several, you know, aspects in the stage we have right now in 2024. I think it's the right decision. In the future, yes, we can, you know, reintroduce this rule if we want to, you know, maybe have more people in KSC, but we're just not there yet. Because again, two folks from the same organization might introduce more problems in the future, right? In terms of the power they have overall. Does that make sense?
Oh, I'm not. I mean, I'm kind of neutral to that one. I'm just highlighting the reasons we chose to make it 2 rather than 1 originally, is because we wanted to let organizations, which again have to get the consent of the contributors of the community. Like you can't just have. Of course, I understand that companies can contribute with lots of people and get an outsized amount of the votes, but that's the point, right? The point is that, you know, if someone is putting in 20 contributors to the project, you'd expect them to have more than 1 seat, or at least 1 seat, you know. But then of course there's the counter example, which is that if there are more than 3 companies that are doing that, you're removing their ability to have influence if you let more than one be go to one company. So I can see the argument there. But anyway, the bigger concern I had was mostly for the special votes.
Yeah, this all in the backdrop that, Matthew, we really would like to see end users start to take a bigger position into some of this. And so, you know, there is no easy answer here, right? And the good thing is governance rules can be changed. And I think that's the whole purpose, is to keep them flexible enough and easy enough and open enough that people can see what's going on.
this also does introduce one potential problem, which is that in the case that, so this actually is one of the other reasons we did it for 2 versus 1, is that in the case where the community has not that many people interested in being on the KSC, by excluding large amounts of potential of the qualified candidates, you might force someone onto the KSC who's not a particularly qualified candidate.
Yeah, but at the same time, it protects us to have a single company influence, right? Because we want to, like, you know, in the future, we want to Kubeflow be diverse, and we want to Kubeflow, you know, be independent on the on the single organization, right? And this is our end goal, right? And we believe that this is better for the, you know, long-term community, to make our community, you know, sustainable and make sure we have enough diversity. And we need to make sure like end users contribute more, and then we need to make sure like end users actually be, you know, eligible to be a part of the steering committee overall. So
over time that we've discussed this a lot in the KFC. We can discuss it a lot here, right?
Yeah, of course, we don't need to discuss it too much. I mean, people, if they have comments, rake them on the thing. When are you going to formally adopt those changes? People, hello?
I don't know if James is still here, but I thought we had the KFC's agreement on both of those.
Well, I mean, principally, but I think the way that you implement the second one really does need to be different, just to prevent crises.
Yeah, there does need to be a little bit more detail on both of those, just so, and I think that maybe there's text there that explains more than what we've seen.
sorry,
during
but
this.
I don't know, what is the crisis specifically, Matthew?
The crisis is where there is literally, like the second proposal, which is that, well, it's actually the first proposal, but the one that's listed second on that link, is the one that says you can't vote more than once when you do have more than one member from each organization.
Okay, what is the crisis?
The crisis is how do you allocate the votes of an organization, because there's no organizations on the board, there's only individuals. So
We don't have this rule today.
sure, I understand that, that's the point. But what I'm saying is that you will have this situation, at least temporarily.
I think the organization should agree on their vote.
Yeah, but
at least for this year.
that's very impractical, right? Like in the end, the actual people who have been elected onto the board are the ones casting the vote. So that means that we need to find a way that allows them to cast their vote while still just not causing a situation where it's ambiguous as to what's happening. You know, it should require explicit consent, public consent to change the constitution. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think consent should be public, right? They can make a decision within their
I think
company.
these decisions might have to be public. I think this one might be explicitly listed as public. Let me just check. Votes.
No, I'm talking about the decisions which make inside the company if they want to vote up
No, of
or
course, I don't care about
down.
that. No. What I'm saying is that the end result, though, is let's say if there is a disagreement for whatever reason, it just needs to be clear that like both member A and member B, I don't want it to be like, oh, member A claims that member B is also voting on this behalf, but they're not. They both need to explicitly say, I am voting for this, I am voting against this, in which case their votes get split to 0.5. Or if they're not, then they both vote together and they become one vote, yes.
So we don't think this is an issue.
So it is. like
All
it
right.
just could happen. Anything that can happen needs to be accounted for in a constitutional kind of question.
Okay, I mean,
The
this
simple
is good
solution is just to
feedback.
say that your votes in special special votes are down-weighted by your proportionate representation on the committee. So you don't count for one vote. If you work at Google and you've got 2 members from Google, your vote counts for 0.5 on these votes.
Okay, I mean, I think that we should consider that. I think James did. I'm not sure if James is still here. Maybe he left.
No, he left.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, anyway, there's nothing else really about this that we need to talk about, I think. But
Yeah,
we've got
yeah.
one website PR to merge. Please
Yeah.
merge.
So where are we with this? Did we get any comments from anybody?
Yeah, people looked at it, but the only comments they had were about things that were not related to it. So, Andre, are you happy with this now? So Alex asked to fix his link, but he can just make a separate PR for that.
Yeah, I think sorry. Yeah, you don't want to modify the JSON, right? So you want to keep it separate for
The reason
every
I did
release.
latest, it's just for practical purposes to prevent so the reason it's multiple files is just because it's practically easier to do. That's all. And there's a script because you don't need to do it manually. It's all automatic. What it will do is, you know how you said, so what happens is when someone tries to set their version as, a version that isn't known to the JSON files, what will happen is the build will fail and it will say, please run the script in this folder.
Yeah, I see. So maybe, like we should just remove the old versions from this JSON because we don't have any distributions which run like on the
Well, no, but
0.6 version.
so all I do is I just take all the versions from the manifest repo. That's all I'm saying. It's just automatic and it's easier if they just stay there, Like,
See.
because otherwise I don't,
Yeah.
there's no reason for the script. All I'm saying is the script guarantees that every version that's ever been released is a valid version to list. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
I
then it
felt like
updates the latest
yeah.
automatically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with these changes again. Like, we need to get +1 from any distributions, or I don't know. Do we just want to move forward? Like,
I think we can move forward now.
I think we've said that we're gonna do lazy consensus. If
Okay.
we don't hear back, it's going to be implemented. I'm okay with moving forward with this, but I'm willing to defer. If somebody strongly feels that we should have more time, I'm glad to give them more time, but we've discussed this probably 15 times now.
Yep.
Maybe not
Any
that
change to
many.
this page is always controversial. I think at this point the changes are very minor and literally just give information about the versions. So that's all they do. So if everyone is, unless anyone on the call wants to veto it right now, I think Andre and Josh, as long as you two agree that it can be merged, we should merge it today.
I will leave my LGTM and I will let others to review as well. Right.
All right, good. Success,
Thank you.
progress, right?
Also, just a quick update, we did manage to delist all the old websites. We've moved all the Netelify hosting to the latest one. We've deleted all the old accounts because they were bugging out and overriding our stuff. So now, eventually over the next month or two, every old website should stop appearing on Google. As if to prove my point, someone randomly put an issue about 0.7 Kubeflow. So that's good. We still need to merge the one last PR, which is to decide if we're going to delist the 1.9 branch and also to agree on how we list the versions in the top right on that top PR. This latest versus master, that discussion.
Yeah, that latest versus master, can we take that on next meeting?
Yeah, of course.
To finish that one up, but let's end on a win. How about that? Can we end on a win today?
Of course.
Yeah. All right, cool. And I guess what 11/11 is when the voting the nominations start, right? So people that want to run for the steering committee need to be thinking about their objective there. Okay, I think that's good for today. We're 13 minutes over once again. Whoever runs this meeting
yeah.
doesn't really keep it on schedule. Go ahead, Julius.
One question, Josh. Who's going to host the vote or the election process this time? Is it Amber again, or?
That's how I understood it. That's how I understand it. We haven't seen Amber for a while. I don't know what's up. I see her periodically, but has anybody talked to her in the last week or so? No, but all right, let's see if we can round this back together and get this moving forward.
Cool. Awesome. I'll stop the recording.